Yeah, Kickstarter.
I did. There we go. Now we are.
And we're on. All right. Hello, good morning, everybody. I'll be your facilitator for this week. We will be looking at tectonic plate movement. Yay! Sorry, I'm running on lack of sleep, so I'm low-key over the place. Anyway, let's get straight into it. So for the first experiment we'll be doing today, we'll be looking at 3 different movements of tectonic plates. And they'll be represented by my 3 colors of plasticine, or in this case, Play-Doh. Abganda. So the 3 movement styles we'll be looking at getting pushed together, being separated, and passing each other. Can everyone see?
Yeah.
Yep. Coolio. All right. So what I want to just put it out there before we go. Initial hypothesis, initial thoughts, feelings, everything. So what do we think is got to happen? Any suggestions, any thoughts, or any feelings?
For the first one?
Yep, we'll go for the first one. So look at this.
What's it say? Is it separating?
So we'll be pushing them together.
That one, okay.
Yeah. So what do we think will happen there?
The plates will collide, and it'll push the land or whatever's. So the tectonic plates sit like this, and as it pushes, it hits the land, and it kind of lifts as a mountain shape. That causes mountains and volcanoes to rise.
Can I add to that?
Yep.
I think, so here's the tectonic plates. They'll push together and then they'll slide like that. So then that's going up. That's where the mountain's going.
Yeah. Okay.
And the other one goes down.
I feel like everyone's gonna have different ones because I think when they get pushed together, they're just gonna buckle and they're gonna bend inwards like that.
Oh yeah.
See, I was thinking the opposite. I thought they might go buckle up.
Yeah, so you're thinking buckle up. So I think Kira was saying the same thing.
Yeah, similar to that.
Okay. So from that, I'm just taking a couple of notes for it. So we're either thinking buckle, overlap. I'm going to call Maddie's overlap, or eruption.
Subduction.
Seduction? Who said seduction? I said eruption. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And for eruption. All right. So for number 2, what are we thinking for this pulling apart, fellas?
Wait, did you say eruption?
Eruption, yes.
As my word?
Yes.
No, I said
Sorry.
subduction.
Oh, subduction. Okay, I'll change that.
Okay, so the next one.
Yep.
Is that the pulling apart?
Yes, it is.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory, really.
Self-explanatory. It's just got to.
Yeah.
Trying
Just
to
Yeah.
create a hole. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
a word.
Yeah, like earthquakes. When they pull away, that's when like the sunken deep holes occur, causing earthquakes. The 2 tectonic plates actually erupt, push away from each other.
Okay.
So cute. Oh.
We've
So-
just resided to the fact that
Yeah.
my children might visit today.
Okay.
Little disclaimer for anyone watching: we have little children engaging in this activity as well.
Yes, they're very excited to learn about tectonic plates.
Well, I'm glad I'm being the teacher then.
More into that Arnott biscuit than the tectonic plate.
All right. So next one is sliding. What do we think will happen when we've got these 2 bad boys sliding together?
I think that might be when more of what Maddie's suggestion might happen, where they'll go over the top of each other.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
I guess like that basically. I think they'll kind of grind like that and maybe shift forwards and stay like that, or but I don't think it'll go anywhere really.
Okay. So we've got our 3 initials for this one. We'll put together, I think at the end, or we can do it now. What do you think will be an overall initial hypothesis for this experiment, this little one here? So when we're looking at the Play-Doh actually moving itself, do we think it, for example, if the Play-Doh is moved in a particular way, it will either buckle, erupt, subduct, or would something along those lines work as our initial for the overall experiment?
Well, it depends on what's occurring, like what kind of collision is occurring, really, because it could be one of the three, and then depending on one of the three, it will be different, or like there might be similarities or differences between their collisions, but yeah.
Is it better to have the 3 separate sentences for this one?
Yeah, I was thinking so, one for each one, maybe.
All right. Cool. Well, we'll go with the 3 then. I made in my notes I'd throw it out there because I'd already done up 3 myself. I just wanted to throw it out there and see what we were all thinking about it. All right, so we'll start it off. So we'll start off with set number 1, which is our pink, and they're being pushed together. Now, for the sake of mess and everything, I'm just doing it on baking paper and a bit of a chopping board. I also note that if there is any disruptions on my end, we've been having internet and we currently have guests over, so there may be people coming in and out. All right, so let's start off. So in the experiment booklet, it notes that you get students to come up because this would be a student activity where you engagement collaborative. But for me, I'm modeling it. So what you do, you're pushing it gently together. And yep. That's what's going on there. Can we see what's going on?
Yep.
Yep. And I'll leave it out there.
Is somebody screenshotting that?
Yeah.
We're doing so good, guys. We're already screenshotting. I love this. So that's it being pushed together. Any observations? What are we seeing?
It's sort of both. It did the sliding over, but because it slid over, it pushed one up.
Mm.
So it buckled a little bit, but
yeah, like buckled a little bit underneath, but that one still went up.
Yeah.
And one kind of went the opposite way.
Well, looking at it, I'm moving that just a bit closer there. Looking at it from my end here, there is the bit of a buckle where it did initially try and go down, but then it just got brought up by the weird angles at the other side there. There's the overlap there. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So a bit of all 3 of what we initially said happened. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Someone's got a photo of that?
Yeah.
Cool.
Got several photos.
Oh, nice. All right, so we'll put him away for now. They'll make an appearance again shortly. Here is our set number 2. Now this is our pull apart, as I fondly like to call it.
So did you make 2 and put them together, or is it one piece that you're pulling apart?
I've made 2 and put them together, but I've also have another piece if we need be just to pull them apart. Because I tested it myself to see how it worked and see what the go was. But I mean, if you want me to, I can roll it and make it all one piece.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to clarify what that started with as.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, it looks a bit thin because I've been abusing it a little bit. It's alive. All right, so pull apart. Let's do it. Yeah, I'm trying to do it as gently as I can because last night I ripped it something fierce and bits and pieces went everywhere. So I'm just trying to. There we go. And
so do you think it could pull apart? Oh, okay. It could pull apart one of the other tectonic plates with the other.
Well, in this one, it's representing an actual full plate itself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So with this activity, it's looking over how earthquakes earthquakes happen and how they're actually related to tectonic plate movement.
Can plates
So, say again?
Can plates tear?
Yeah, that's
Well,
what I'm thinking.
that's how we have fissures. So you know the Ariana Trench?
Ah,
And
okay, yeah.
that's actually a massive fissure in between two tectonic plates in the Pacific and Atlantic. Yeah, I remember correct. I can't remember off the top of my head. I made a note of it somewhere. I can't find it. But yeah, that's actually one of the best examples of a bit of a tear and one of the grind situations as well that we'll look at shortly. But yeah, so that's there. That's the pull apart. You can also see by the indents on my fingers. You can ignore them, but that's a bit of the force just pulling apart everything, and that's where. And you can see with the plastic itself, the Play-Doh itself, because of its nature, there is probably a bit of a grip. Is there anything we'd like to add to that? Any observations? Anything we saw, liked, didn't like?
No, I think that was pretty good.
It was interesting though that it started to tear in the middle, whereas you would think that because the outsides might be a little bit flimsier. That was just an observation I made, that it started to tear in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's a good one because it does reflect kind of like how there has to be a line of symmetry or some sort of fragmentation line going through, and I think Well, all right, we'll move on to the next one now that we've got those out of the way. Hi, my Tad friend. We'll see you on the flip side. All right, now back to our third set, which is our side by side. So for this one, we'll be going. One will be moving forwards, one moving back towards me. And we'll just be seeing what's happening in between the areas. Okay. So I'll go about there. What are we thinking? What are we saying?
Sort of overlapped over the top.
Yeah, starting to overlap a little bit.
Moving. That's moving it all the way. That's passing. So I'll bring it back and just have a bit. One more. Now, noting that both of these are actually flat on the edges, and it's only the mounds on the top that are somewhat elevated. So let's go again. Yeah, there we go.
So it's overlapping it.
Yeah. So an overlap's occurring. Anything else that we're looking at? Is there any? Can you see any damage? Anything going on?
Not really, no.
Not really, but if you were to push them side to side, it might. Is it only meant to go like that and
Yeah.
come back again, or just fully go like that?
Only meant to be going the two, like what my hands are doing, side by side.
I
So-
was thinking like maybe it'll eat away the rock a little bit,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
like eat away if over like a long period of time, if that was to happen.
Yeah. All right. So now, when we're looking at all three of our piece scale, I'll just bring them back out again. Bit more of a corrupted because I need to pull them apart. What do you think? Is there any notable differences between each style or each of the three forms? I know Kira just mentioned that, and so did Matt and Darcy, that there's no real damage on our third set for the sliding. Over time, yeah, there might be. We might see some crack, or they might see some piece fall off if I did it over, say, an hour or so. But in the couple of seconds that we just did it, or about the minute we did it before, is there any real differences that we can see in between?
I'd say the tearing one or the pulling apart one has the most change overall, or the most damage.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree too. Definitely.
Would we say that if we looked at the experiment again with students and everything, do you think that they would be thinking initially, yep, pull apart would be the most damage?
I guess I can see students though with the first one, like the pushing together. I can see them sort of getting a bit carried away and just crashing them into each other. Yeah, one big ball or one big clump of.
Yeah,
plate.
that was one of the things I found. I did it with my two younger sisters last night. I had them both attempt to do this activity themselves, and it was found that one just went full. Crushed the two, and another one just ripped everything apart. So I did find that it was very much based on the student, and if you had students who were pushing and shoving, you might have a very different result to what we had.
Yeah.
All right. So now the next
how
part.
might we adjust that in the classroom? Cater for that in the classroom.
So what I found worked in the sense was that you have to set up a model. You have to set up modeling how you would initially do it. So you saw how I placed out my fingers when I was doing the tear. Had the tears, focused on 3 points and just used that and gently used that little bit of pressure and force to move it out. That I think doing it, there has to be a modeling aspect in the way that you have to show students how to press, how to move it initially to then set up those boundaries and set up that actual proper learning area. Because if you don't, you will have instances where they're just going full send it or just full tear it, and you're kind of losing the actual aim of the experiment. Because as you said before, Lana, like you noticed with this tear that there was a tear happening down the middle. There was a centralized spot. That was one of the learning outcomes for this one. You're actually wanting students to see that there are 2 points and that there is a reason for those 2 points as they are being centralized. So if you were to do that for students, there's got to be a boundary and a model set up, in my eyes, from doing the experiment. But that's just my opinion. I mean, if anyone else does.
No, I'd completely agree with that statement there. I'd say if you demonstrated to the students how to do the activity before creating it, it would give them some notion of how to do it properly.
And coming back to setting those really clear expectations of what they're expected to do.
Yeah.
And well, on that note, what year level do we think this would be for?
I'm thinking it's like looking at tectonic plate, which is a little bit higher up, but using like materials, I was thinking like 4 or 5.
Yeah, 4.
I was pushing for grade 5.
Just it's a bit higher
upgrades.
So I'll reveal the grade at the end of the following experiment as well. The reason I asked that is because we're talking about setting those expectations and setting those rules and goals. Now, if we're talking for anything younger than year 4, I think that would be a little bit hard for that because they are still in that phase where they are very hands-on. They want to engage, they want to get in there, and they want to do stuff very actively. But for older grades, I think what we've said, where we have the initial setup followed by the model, I think that would be a real good way to go. All right.
Yeah, because for my last placement at Marymount for grade 4, we did the exact same experiment, what you're doing.
Oh, insider information, Kira.
Yeah, it was like grade 4. Yeah, it was good activity. They loved it.
All right. I like that. So for the next little part of this, we've got to actually use a couple of blocks, as you can see here, just to get more of a clear understanding of what's going on and what the effect of the movement has on other materials, other substances, and other factors. So for this one, putting them about there, as you can see, got me a few blocks. Just putting them down the line. Oh, who's dying? Who's screaming? Who's alive? Right, we're all good. No one's dead on me.
No.
Yeah, we're good.
All right, cool. All right, so for this one, I've put the blocks down the center line where the two plates will be touching. As you can see, bang and bang. So with this one, it's meant to model what will happen to other materials or other substances on these sides of the plate. All right, so let's go with our first set, which is pushing them together. Give it a try. So what can we see going on here?
Pushing
The buildings are falling over.
one of the plates is sliding up, causing it to. Oh, it's going like that.
And I'll leave it about there. We'll go with that.
I noticed when you had the objects there, it made it easier for the plates to actually collide and go up when you had the heavier surface on top.
Yeah. So that's the full overall of the remnants of our bit of blocks and a bit of building. So yeah, as Kira said, it's clear that when we're moving the actual pieces along and having the pieces there, it did make it seem to look easier compared to our one before, where it just immediately one buckled on the other and then they still both moved up. But in this one, it's clear that they're moving up more compared.
Yeah, definitely.
And look, what's the spray of debris in this case?
They've all kind of moved away from that join point.
Is one? Well, I'm looking at the right side. Well, this side. I'll call it side A and side B. Side A it looks like it has
Take that one
on the side, and it also looks like it was more pushed by side B here. Just looking at the close up. Yeah.
Did we say that it was pushed, or the effects of like us creating a slope or like gravity had an effect on the object itself?
I think that would be probably the best way to describe it, because as side A, when they were coming up, we did see that they were kind of rolling off whichever side which had the bit more of a steeper slope. And if you look at side B here, you've still got pretty much a vertical dip here, but if you look at my side, there's very much a curve.
Yeah.
So I think it is very much the weight plays a factor, and then which side buckles first. Follow up with that. Okay. There we go. Someone got a photo of that one?
Yeah.
Perfecto.
I got 3 photos, like the before, during, and after.
Oh, Darcy. Too good. Right. Move these ones away. I'll keep you alive. Drop. Alright. Now we're looking at our set number 2, which is tearing. Any initials for this one? Now that we've seen what's going on.
I think they're going to fall in rather than fall away. I think they might fall in, like into the hole we create. The void. That's the word. Void.
The void. Time to enter the void. That sounds like way too much like a movie line, and I'm not going to say it again.
Like a sinkhole.
Sinkhole? I like
Like
that.
a sinkhole.
Oh yeah,
Like a sinkhole. Yeah.
I like that. Well, let's give it a try. I can actually pull them apart. That's the next question. No, that's failing. 2 seconds. Technical difficulties. We're doing it live.
That'd be so hard.
Didn't move. It's so depressed. All right.
So are we supposed to assume that it's going to tear right where the building.
Yeah, there's the assumption that it will tear. Hang on, let me just. I'm rolling it back.
With science, you always give accurate results, so you attempt more than once.
Yeah, exactly. This is we're trial and error, as they say.
Good
Good
explanation.
cover.
we know what we're doing. Unknown factors. We know what's going on.
We know.
Not as unknown as you think.
Oh, I like that. All right, let's try it again. So there we go. That's what we're looking for. And there we go. That's what we're looking for. All right. So what's going on here? Let's have a look. We've attempted twice now. Similar results going on. What do we think's going on? Why do we think this has decided to be mean to me?
Does it come back to what Kira said before about the weight? I think it was Kira or Maddie that talked about the weight changing the effects of what it does to the Play-Doh itself, and whether or not that would translate into the real world.
Yeah, I think that's a big factor in this, and I think there might be a human error as well. I'm going to be honest, there might be human error as well in terms of how I'm pulling it apart and how it's going. But also at the same time, if you look at it from this angle here, there is a dip. There is that slight dip to where we're going. Section has been pulled out on the way. So our initial where it says where we are looking at falling down or falling through, it looks like it's coming to, but in case of the weight and probably the distribution of where our block friends are, that probably plays a factor in where things are and what they're doing. Any thoughts or feelings on that, or?
And we are using a softer material too, so tectonic plates are meant to be, I guess, hard.
Meant to be those harder, a bit more brittle.
Yeah, so it might have a different look result than Play-Doh, but yeah, I think with Play-Doh, because it's just so soft, the buildings are sitting on one half, but you know when an earthquake happens and like you get those sinkholes and it just misses the building and you get those massive big
crevices. Yeah.
Crowns in. So that's a good example of showing like how they didn't all just sink in the hole. All those buildings, like whatever they are, the bricks.
We'll call them brickies. No, I 100% agree there with Kira. I think this is a good take on how not all the time there is that fall effect. There is points where, I mean, here you can see that that's a pull from straight underneath that section there, and yet it's still hovering. It's still intact. While if I would apply more pressure there would be an effect where everything would move, most likely. There's still that support over this side. And I think there's also that fact with the weight distribution and again, the type of material we're using. So that's why it would or has caused a bit more of an upset.
Yeah.
It has, though, as you said before, it has disrupted the buildings a bit, even though that wasn't straight on top of the hole we created. It has disrupted the foundations.
Yeah.
Of them.
Where's my knife? I'm not dangerous. So with I'm using my knife as an example here. Flat surface down. You can see that there is a very open space down below that section there. So I think that's exactly what Alana said. It's showing that there is a damage to the foundation, but because of the support and the weight, the other side, or the weight distribution, everything, there's a support system in place anyway. So that's why we haven't seen a total collapse. It turned out to be a better teaching example than I thought. I'm kidding, guys. I know what I'm doing.
Wait, so what exactly are we assuming, like, with the buildings? Do you think, like, with
So
the
we're looking at how the movement of the tectonic plates would affect the buildings. Or
Yeah.
a little
So
block.
what do we think? Do we think it would sink a bit, or like when they separate? I
It
don't
would
know.
definitely create a what's the word I'm looking for? It would create a hazard to the structure underneath. Like, you know how with buildings they have like those posts that go up to the ground to give them that structural support so they don't tip over.
Yeah.
I'd say that would, like, if in the case of a real like separation of tectonic plates and say they were real buildings, I'd say that there would be damage because Steve would say with the knife that there was like a little bit of a dip underneath that
Yeah.
landmass.
Actually, now that I think of it, I've seen it in movies, you know, when like something like that happens and there's like all of a sudden like a massive ditch in the road or something, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Even when you go to the beach and you start digging like a hole, you know that like the sides start to fall in. As
yeah,
well.
it starts to
Yeah.
fall in. Yeah. Okay, cool.
I think if we're looking for a movie reference, I think San Andreas, the one with the rock in it, would be one of the best ones. That's depicting a massive earthquake and a massive shift in tectonic plates.
Mm.
Yeah, sorry, I just had to get my movie reference in there. You know, had to do it. All right, so now we're looking at our third set. We're looking at them sliding past each other. So what are we thinking with this one?
I think it's going to move the buildings. So, like,
Oh,
displace them.
yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Let's give it a go. Now remember, I'm moving this side A forward, side B backwards. That's them parting. Good. All right. So that's our final look at the two passing by each other. So what can we see? What's going on here?
Are we assuming that that's created a bit of a hole or a void?
Well, I'm based off what I'm seeing here. I believe so. Initially, if the two plates, from a bit of extra reading I've done, there is a displacement occurring along that line, along the two connections of the tectonic plates. I may have taken it a little bit too far in terms of that. There is that gap there now. However, when you're looking at the movement of plates, you will have that shift happening, and you will have that slight moving, and before you realign or reattach. Hello,
Okay.
little friend. So in this case, it can be seen that while initially that both these two, I'll call it block A and block B, were overlapping in the top, as they moved, there was a displacement occurring with block A, and then block B followed in after the two plates had moved a certain distance apart. So yeah.
That hasn't affected the other buildings, so it's really just where the sliding occurs.
It's just between the two sides where the tectonic plates move, touch or engage with one another.
That's a really interesting observation that the other ones haven't been affected much at all.
So it's really just where the collision is.
Like with like Christchurch in New Zealand, I think they run through a fault line, or there's a fault line that goes through there, which is why there are so many devastating earthquakes.
If I'm bringing in terms, I was going to bring in later.
Yeah.
No, but that's 100% right. Fault lines refer to connections between tectonic plates and the movement in between them. So they're essentially the edge lines or boundary lines that will be affected when the movement of tectonic plates occur. whether it be coming together, moving side by side, or being pulled apart. Those would be the fracture lines in some cases, if they're known. All right, so let's move on. We've had too much time playing with Play-Doh and blocks to last a lifetime. So why do we do this? Like, that's my question. Why do we use models like this? Any thoughts? Any feelings?
I guess simulate.
Wait, what was the question? Sorry, why do we?
So why do we use models and experiments like this?
To get an understanding of, I mean, how natural disasters occur as well. Give us an idea. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's very much to both demonstrate the theory and idea, as well as just showing a practical example of what might occur or how things do occur when this happens.
Yeah, giving them a mental, visual aspect in their head.
Because you can't exactly take them out and show them the actual plates. So
No,
you've got to try and bring it that big down into the small somehow.
Alright. Perfecto. Oh, that's honestly along the lines of the definition that I've got here. We use these experiments to practically model theoretical concepts and theoretical thinking, as well as also providing opportunities to assess risks and or other factors such as effects on environments. If in the case of tectonic plate movement, the effects of environments and other flora, fauna, and infrastructure.
I feel like as a teacher, I mean, I don't know what the plasticine, how it would go with that, but like looking at how that went, I don't know, maybe I'd use other materials. I just don't know what. But then again, I guess we're assuming they don't know anything, so whether it turns out right or wrong.
It's all a bigger learning activity.
Yeah. But I'd be interested to see, like, I don't know what plasticine really is. Like what it feels like.
I think it's just a harder Play-Doh. I think it's kind of you're able to model it a bit more.
It's a bit similar to clay. So has anyone ever used clay for a modeling purpose?
Yeah.
Or played with clay?
Yeah.
It's a bit similar in structure and a bit consistency.
I might add now, while we're on the topic of clay, a lot of schools now bring in clay and other like fidgeting materials for kids with ADD or ADHD to sort of keep them attentive in class. So utilizing materials like this, do you think them playing with it sort of in between the activity would be a bad idea? Like, do you think we should hand these materials out sort of after we've explained the activity and after, or how do you think, or should we leave that until the end where we talk about pedagogy and
May as well talk about it while we're on the topic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can note for this experiment itself. As I said before, this would be a collaborative activity where you'd have your teacher up the front actually showing and using the materials, and then students would be individually picked to come up and attempt the pushing, the pulling apart, and the sliding. For both the blocked version and the normal version.
Yeah.
And in that case, yes, there would be, you'd limit the amount of actual exposure students have to the fiddly material, in this case the Play-Doh or the plasticine.
Yeah.
And I believe that would be very much knowing your students, being who would grip onto that, who would very much start trying to take that bit of material.
Yeah.
And who would actually just do the activity, get out of the way, and go back. So that comes under your own teacher discretion, in my eyes. And as again, I tested this on my sisters last night, and one One likes to fiddle, a bit like me, as you can see with my pen here.
Yeah.
Same.
Yes, fiddling squad. But it's very much one like to pick it up and move it around, get a bit of a feel for it, while the other, yep, done, moved on. Is that it? I need to go.
Yeah.
So it's very much that bit of balance between who's knowing your students and then knowing what actual outcome or result you'll get by engaging them or having them in this activity. And now I'm not saying there's anything about discrimination or anything like that. You are being inclusive with this activity, because each time you'll have one student come up to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. I think it's pretty controlled. Yeah, I don't see too much issue with it, as long as it's controlled in the right environment.
Do you think age has a factor? Because you mentioned you have two systems. Are they different?
Guys, I'm so sorry. Alana, can you just stop the recording for a minute, please?
We're not going to lose it, are we?
It shouldn't. It should come up as a separate recording saved in the thing. But I've just had a police officer roll up my crunchy power. We've got random kid power. We've got bonsai power. We've got beach power, and we've got.
They're not random children. They are my own. It's own. I do own them. All right, we are recording again, guys.
All right, perfecto. All right, quick disclaimer: Steve is not in trouble. Put it out there.
All right, let's move on to number two.
Back into it. All right, so we're moving on to activity number 2. So before I do go on to that, I would ask, if introducing this type of topic to our students, what type of substance or what type of thing would we actually use to try and model this to our students? So if we've already talked about that, we're looking at tectonic plates as being brittle, somewhat rigid materials. What would we use to model that? Any ideas, thoughts, feelings, emotions?
My first thought was shortbread. I'm just hungry, so.
Would you like me to demonstrate? I have a shortbread right here.
You have a shortbread.
Just by the way, just ironically.
Scotch finger.
It is a Scotch finger. It is.
I love them.
But I think they would crumble.
Yeah.
Like it would just, whatever you do to it, it would kind of crumble.
Perfect. All right. Perfect.
No, I've got crumbs all over my desk.
I already do, so it's all right.
Anyway, on let's get past the Scotch fingers. We're all hungry and we all want them. Scotch fingers, we're not sponsored.
On
it, yeah.
Anyway, well, for the next activity, we'll be using boiled egg shells for this. We're using this to represent that brittle and rigid aspect that we were talking about before, and we'll be doing it in the same sense of what we did with the Play-Doh. So we'll have one set that will be focused on pushing together, one set that will be used for pulling apart, and another set that will be moving together. Perfecto. All right.
Can we just pop in here with eggshells? So my sister actually has an eggshell allergy.
Ooh.
So if you had a student like that in your class, how would we work around that? Because I know there's a few allergies about consuming eggs, but it's a lesser known allergy of someone who has an allergy to the actual eggshell.
Could we do like one different material for that person? Like,
depends if it's a class activity or a group.
Yeah.
Well, in the document, for the primary connections document that I've been giving, and from what I've read, it is a collaborative student-based activity which will have probably groups of 3 to 4. They'll be using a cracked hard-boiled eggshell, like this here, and they will be actually holding it, moving it, breaking it, doing the whole 9 yards with it. In terms of PP and allergy stuff, I was actually going to discuss that after the activity, but since we're onto it now, let's get it out of the way and sorted.
Yeah.
In terms of allergens, there is a note that you can either use a different material that's which is
more allergies, light sensitive or something like that.
More allergy sensitive, that's the word. Hypoallergenic. Allergenic. I just got talked by the fuzz, man. I'm trying to get myself back into it. I'm sorry, Alan. I'm sorry, Jamie. Like, no.
So
Anyway,
my son
so-
just fell off the couch, so that's why I popped
Oh,
away.
no.
We're all having. It's the 5-year-old. He bounces. He's fine. In
Nice.
terms of dealing with allergies, maybe if you had a child in your class that did have that egg allergy, because it's a rare one to be the eggshell, maybe you would do it as a whole class one.
Yeah, there was. Oh, sorry, Alana. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're right. Or if you're doing it in groups, if the teacher sat with that group and did it.
Yeah. So the thing that I've come up with was literally that you change the model of the activity to either a teacher centered, where the teacher is the only one setting up the room. You have that distance set up. You have much like our social distancing, you set up a 1.5 or you set up that 1 meter distance. So you have a safe zone and a safe buffer between that student who may have the allergen or allergy and the allergen material, which it would be in this case the eggs. The other thing would be is that you change the material. You find something of similar consistency, hardness, rigidness, brittleness. And I did come up with the idea of using some of those oval Arnott's biscuits, the A-root ones. Arrowroot ones. Yeah. That would
I
be.
also have those if you want an example.
See? Hey, waving. I love it. But yeah, so I thought using the arrowroots, that would be also a good example of, you've already got the break and you can push them together. You won't see as much of a overlap as you would with Play-Doh or plasticine, but you can still see the two materials colliding and engaging. You've also got the ability to have them breaking. That would be snap, and then you have them side by side. So you have access to different materials that you could use to support students who have allergies. And because you don't want to isolate them from the class, it will become an inclusive practice to use the different materials or change it to a teacher-centered learning.
Quick question.
Yes.
With the egg,
Yes.
I wasn't sure if I read it wrong or not, but do you start with the whole hard-boiled egg, and then, because you have to cut it in half and show them and kind of relate it to like the Earth's like center core, the mantle, and then the eggshell represents the Earth's outer crust, outer layer. So would you find a material that's more similar to that than, say, just like an Arnott's biscuit, because it's giving a completely different perspective? Like the Arnott's biscuit is really only representing the tectonic plates, whereas the eggshell is also representing that, but it's representing more than that. So
with that, yes, Maddie, we'll be doing that, and that'll be third part of our activity, and I've got that all prepped here. For the purpose of that, however, you will still use the egg. You'll just it is a teacher modeled activity anyway, and again, you have to put those safety restrictions in place. Off the top of my head, I can't think of another one. Like, you could maybe use, if you wanted to look at it from a visual perspective, you could use rock melon, in the sense that you have the green layer, the whiter or the browner sub-layer, and then the actual orange fruit, if you wanted to do something like that. Or you could do the same with an orange if you wanted to change it.
I had the idea of an orange. And then, like, if it was just the eggshells by themselves and, you know, they had, like, an eggshell allergy, like, you can get these, I mean, you could do it with food if you wanted, like, the Arnott's biscuits is a great idea, I think. But you can also get, like, wooden, like, timber pieces. I'm trying to find.
Oh yeah, little block.
Yeah, but they've got like a little, like the end is kind of curved like that, so then they're sitting like that straight, and then it shows, you know, the process of how it goes, or like during the different transformations. I saw that might be another alternative if they've got allergies. But yeah,
just use the different materials,
Yeah.
sort them out. And I think that comes down to knowing your class and knowing what you're up with as well.
yeah.
Professional standard 1, know your students and how they learn.
Yes.
Sister.
See, we know it. We know it.
Was that
all
two? That one?
I think one is know the content and how to teach it. Two is know your
I
students.
thought it was.
No, we
your-
don't
I
know
think
it.
it's the other way around.
Is it?
Yeah, I think the first one's know your students and how
And how they learn.
Yeah, it's 1.1.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, we totally know what we're doing.
Yeah, you guys are right.
That's right.
What was that?
I said you guys are right.
Steve.
One is know your students.
Oh,
Two is know the
naughty.
content.
No, he's just creating discussion.
I mentioned it in an assignment the other day, and then I think the lecturer said like it was the other way around, and I got confused.
Oh.
I was like, oh god, I've referenced that wrong. But I think I was right.
Well.
Well, let's get this. We'll get this activity done and get out of the way. So let's have a gander. We've got our 3 sound effects as well. So we've got set 1. We'll be pushing these 2 pieces together. Set 2 will be breaking this fella, and then set 3 will be moving these 2 apart. Now, for this activity, since it is very similar to what we looked at before, how are we thinking initial hypothesis wise? What are we thinking? What are we thinking has got to happen to?
Well, it's a lot more delicate material compared to the Play-Doh, that's for sure. So I reckon there'll be a lot more damage done through the tectonic plates because it's so fragile. Dave.
I think it will be good for the students to see like that round, that like give that kind of round. I know that's sliding away a little bit from the initial hypothesis, but for them to see like the curve of it, because the other ones were flat and we know that the earth is round. So to be able to see like this is the whole egg, and this is where all the different plates kind of sit. So they can see the curvedness.
I dig it. All right. Well, we'll get into it and we'll see what happens. All right. We'll start off with our come together. We've got our 2 pieces here. I'll come together. And in this case, gently, so fiddly. I hate this.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. That's the push.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! It did it.
Each other.
Yeah.
Ah.
You can see at the base there that there is the overlap between the 2. And you saw throughout the case, it was a case of they've coming together and then one overtaking the other. But that might be. Ooh, yep,
I think, like the curved part of the egg is good, but I feel like you should just get one curve of the egg and then break it in half, because you don't have 2 tectonic plates that look like this, and I think that might confuse students when they're trying to clash them together, because it's not really a realistic presentation of it.
Right. Well, let's see if I can not break these as much as I already have. There. Right. I'm just remodeling this eggshell on the go. Don't worry about it. All right. So in that case, going off from what I said before, we'll rearrange. Have a bit more of the flatter surfaces. Yep. And that's then coming together. How are we thinking? What are we thinking?
So it's sort of overlapped, but was there any breakage there? Because it's a little bit hard to see. The camera's gone a little grainy. I'm not sure whether that's to do with internet.
Is that me? Yeah.
I think that looks like a better representation as well. But
well, there is minor cracking to
A little bit of crumbly.
to part there. and it does look like there was initial braking when it first went against each other.
Mm. Yeah. Like a little bit of friction or something.
Yeah.
Like they're obviously going to touch, so there's that factor in, but they kind of look like they've just kind of slide.
Yeah, just collide and mush together.
Nothing like really major damage.
No.
No, not at all.
Okay. Well, that's major damage 1 done. Any last thoughts, feelings, or opinions? Nope.
Pretty similar to the first one, except I'd say the smooth surface had something to do with it instead of the plasticine, which is like a grippier sort of texture.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's two different
One
ones now.
that broke because it was brittle. That sort of skimmed over the other one.
Kind of died on. All right. Cool. Right. Well, here's our second. Now, this is more of I looked at. I thought this would be a bit more of a better representation. Can everyone see it?
Yeah.
Because it is that curvature, and it is very much representing like 2 forming. Yeah. So
We can only see half of that, Stephen. Yeah.
okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to get the angles right.
No, that's right. That's why I thought I'd tell you.
All right, so we'll do the pull apart.
Yeah.
Pulled apart. So what
It definitely did what we thought the plasticine was going to do. Create that line down the middle.
That'll be the line. That would be our line right there. Yeah, it is very much. It did form along that one central brake line, and even with the force applied, you saw that this little section here, it gripped on ever so slightly, but then eventually it pulled off and moved. Any other observations there? Anything?
No.
No? No.
Wait, you had 2 separate pieces to start with?
No, it was one solid piece.
Oh, yeah, cool beans.
No worries. Yeah, one solid egg piece, and now it's 2. Now I've got to say goodbye because I don't need it anymore. All right. So now we're looking at our 2 side by sides. Now for this, I'm going to do a quick edit with them here because just keeping a bit more to levels. There we go. Ooh, everything all right? Everyone okay?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, cool. Yeah, much like I did with the plasticine, I'm going to go 1 forward, 1 back. Any thoughts before we get it in?
None from me.
Like crumble a bit, maybe?
Crumble a bit? Okay.
Teeny bit just on the edges.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. There we go. Yeah, well, it got caught. It got caught in this little section here. Right there. I think that's a good thing as well, because there is, you probably won't be able to see it through the video coming through, but there are slight bits of crack and bit of debris around. So yeah, so that's the slide move, and I think just going back to what Kira had said earlier, there was got to be a bit of friction in between them, and that has caused bits of stuff happening. Bit of movement happening.
And with like earthquakes, so they have a different rating for each earthquake that happens, like an 8 or a 9, that type of thing. So that would obviously
determine the level in which the actual seismic event was occurring. So we'd have that definite rage or that definite more either the stronger grind, weaker grind, or less contact situation. I think that would be very much for the earthquake situation. All right. Well, that's that experiment done. So comparing all three sets, I'm not going to bring the eggs out again because they're shattered. But comparing all three, so what did we notice? What was going on with a lot of them? And
results between 2 and 3, but the one I think was a bit different. I mean, two with the plasticine, it did tear a little bit, but it still had that line in between both plates.
Yeah.
Whereas in 1, we saw the plasticine sort of come up with it, and then with the eggs, it sort of just went up and then it skimmed over it. So.
And I think there was definitely a comment to be made there about the breaking. Was that it was very much a compact with the eggs. It was very much pushing against one another until one broke. And did join. And that was, yeah, it was very much linking to what Maddie was saying earlier about that contact situation. All right, put those back down there. Yay, 2 activities done, guys. We're doing so well. And we're discussing stuff too as we go. All right, so now we've got our third and final. So I know it's sad. It's actually love chilling here with me. Morning just turned rough. All right, so we've already talked about what type of materials we'd use for representing Earth and representing the different layers of it. And for this one, as we've said before, we'll be using an egg. So I've just got me little egg fella here. So let me get him out. Ooh. There we go. Yeah. So we've got me a little egg, as you can see here. Now we've got the white, the grey, and the yellow. Now, what layers do you think these would be representing?
The inner core, the mantle. Mantle for the egg yolk. The white. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what the grey would represent. What's that?
Outer core or something?
Outer core. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
That's it. So you've got with the egg here, and I'll show you this little basic diagram. Brennan, straight in. Everyone see that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. So with this one, this would be one of the resources that you use with your students when you're first engaging with it all, and this is what you'd show them when you're first get everything sorted and just introducing the ideas of core, outer core, mantle, and crust. In the case here, the egg works perfectly. In this case, is that I'll just bring that down. So we've got our inner core, which is our yellow section, which is our egg yolk. The grey outline we'll call that our outer core. Our mantle is represented by the white, and then our crust would be represented by the actual eggshell itself.
It's hard to cut an egg with the shell on it, though.
Yeah, I tried. It didn't work.
Yeah.
I had minimal success with the hard-boiled egg, but then all the eggshells were shattered and peeled off before I even had the chance to, well, you know. Anyway, so for this part of the activity, it's looking at more why would we use this as a representation tool. I know we spoke about it before, but in terms of student learning and introducing that idea of inner core, mantle, and crust, and then relating that to how the tectonic plates move and how they're actually affected, how would using this actually work? Any thoughts or feelings before I go on and give the answer?
I think it's definitely a good representation of the layers of Earth. Like the children can actually see it. And then if you were able to in some way even if you just had the egg sitting down and was able to place a couple of the pieces of the shell back on it, and then you can show them move and come together and stuff like that.
Yeah. Or even just have a whole nother boiled egg that still has the shell on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a great concrete material as well. So students they're not just looking at a picture and kind of feeling like they have to memorize it. They can see it, they can identify it before going to the real actual world.
Yeah. I think one thing we have to be careful with the tectonic plates is not confusing them between that and the continents.
Yeah.
I think that's why we've really taken the globe aspect and looking at a globe when talking about tectonic plates away from it.
Even the crust, because I'm pretty sure the tectonic plates sit underneath the crust, don't they?
Don't they form the crust?
Yeah.
No, they are the form of the crust. Tectonic plates are, and then the actual continents themselves are about what's the right word for it? The protruding earth that's on top of everything. Oops. No worries. They're the protruding earth that sits on top, and then you have the water going through the basis there. There is actually technically more levels and layers to this idea when you're looking at it in general. I've got the photo here because you've got the lithosphere and the ocean, which actually represent the continents and the surface of the actual planet. Then you've got the plate layer, which it represents the tectonic plates.
And I've got an image too.
Oh, we got images.
Yeah, it's it's the world map, but yeah, what Alana was saying with not confusing them with the continents, it's basically a diagram where all these lines are is where all the different, I think there's 7 different sections of tectonic plates that move around the world. Where are we? Oh, there's the Australian plate down there, so it kind of runs basically along the line of New Zealand, which is why they do get so many earthquakes, which is what Darcy said way earlier. So yeah, like showing them that as well, where tectonic plates are, and that they're not just the continents. So not that it's super important, but when they get to the older grades as well, like it is more important to know like how it happens as well.
100% agree, and there's definitely that need for knowledge in terms of why things are where they are, and why we don't see 2 continents rubbing up against each other and causing earthquakes. It's actually there is another factor below the surface that we're looking at.
Yeah.
So in terms of I'll just circle back to our egg example for a second. So with coming from the eyes of a student, and we're looking at identifying different levels or the different layers, for example. So you've got inner core, outer core, mantle. How would you describe them in terms of students? So when you're looking at the egg, what would be the main descriptors for you?
Probably the core. The core would be the easiest to describe. Because it's
how yellow. That?
I just feel like that outer core, because the outer core is technically bigger. It's not the best representation of it. Like that grey bit.
Yeah. But stop criticizing the egg, man. No. I'm kidding. But no, I do agree. It is a bit more of a fiddly example because you do have disproportionate. I think in terms of for using the egg as the example, you've got the clear colorations, which would be one of the clear ideas for students to actually identify. So as Darcy was saying before, the core would be the easiest to identify, as it would be the brighter, the more eye catching. That thinner grayer line, we'd identify that as the outer core. And for students, that would be simple in the way that yes, it's literally gripping onto the core, but it's also hard because you might have some students who just immediately associate the greater white area as the outer core compared to actually using it as the mantle and then bringing in later on the egg shell as the crust. So there is that association where you need to support students' learning and how they actually identify and do it, because it is, as we've said before, it is one of the better examples of doing it, but it also has its drawbacks.
What you're saying is we need to put the egg inside the rock melon.
Yes, we'll gouge out the hole.
Yeah.
Put it inside. There's the layers. We got this. Perfect. The prep work for that would be insane. I love it.
The turducken, and they put the chicken in the. Never mind. Don't worry. I'm getting off topic.
Yeah, please no. Let's not jump down that rabbit hole of weird foods.
Yeah.
We're already creating the egg of grapefruit. So
This is why we shouldn't record at lunchtime, guys.
hell yeah. Well, we're almost done. We're almost done. And sorry, Ali and Jamie. You know, we're just. It's called community discussion. We're engaging in our learning.
It's been an experiment.
Yeah.
So are we up to the CDSU now?
Yeah, I'm just about to wrap it up. Experiment and everything. Sorry, I'm taking.
No, don't be sorry. I'm just asking.
Oh, Maddie.
Sorry.
All right. So I'm just looking at some of the questions here. I'm just double checking that we've talked about it. Some of the questions that they have in the actual primary connections document is how would you describe the egg white? So what type of texture would it be if you were to touch it? How would you describe it? I mean, I've got it here and I can tell you my thoughts and feelings. The egg white is literally very squishy. It's squishy, but it's also rigid. So you can apply a bit of pressure, but it will spring right back.
Like a firm squishy?
Well,
A firm squishy, yes. Firm squishy. That's how we're describing things now.
Observational term.
Yes, firm and
No
squishy.
inferences, just observation. It's a firm squishy.
Firm squishy and white.
can we say it's smooth, or is that inferring that it's smooth?
Well, if you look, I've got to get it right up to my camera. There are slight ridges and everything throughout, if you can see that.
Is that just because you used a serrated knife or a butter knife? Or...
No, I used a smooth knife.
Ah, okay.
So there is that reasoning where you can say, looking at it from the inside, yeah, there might be a slight differentiation on how you're actually cutting it, and equaling out to what the texture will look like on the inside. But on the outside, it's smooth, smooth to the touch. So then, if we're looking at how we describe the egg yolk, in this case, it's definitely way more solid and more rigid than the outside, the mantle, or white
More
section.
firm, not as squishy.
So no. It is firm, not squishy.
Firm.
And it has more of a crumbly texture too.
Well, you can see that there are little bits of there's little bits of flex and everything just coming off the top, even as we speak. There's different. There we go. That's perfect camera angle.
For the demonstration, could you pop? No, not now, but like in a classroom, would you utilize the fact that you can pop like the yolk out of the what is it? What's that? Out of the white to demonstrate that this is the core, or this is the inner core, this is the outer core. But yeah, would you use that, like that ability that you can pop it out?
That would be one of the ways you could do it. Only reason I didn't do it was because it was half broken, the one I was working with. But here we go.
A little bit messy too.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, he's partially dead. But it also brings us to the extra example of how looking at the grey outline.
Yeah.
Looking at how it is a circum core. It is language. It is actually circling the core, or in this case, the egg yolk. That is that other example. You can bring that in, and that actually answers the question: how would you describe that? How would you describe that? And it's a thin layer.
Yeah.
So what do we think some similarities would be between like Earth and just using the egg? Like this bad boy, this example here.
You can definitely see the layers, so
Mm.
like that layer comparison between the Earth and the, even though they're not as to scale, I guess, as we would like them to be. You can, the students can definitely see the outer, the inner, and the separation between them.
Yeah.
I agree.
I guess if you wanted to be like proper about it, instead of cutting the egg down horizontally, you could cut it not vertically. You could cut it horizontally. That way, it's like rounder rather than egg shaped.
That was one of the other cuts that we did find that I did do.
Yeah.
I don't have it here because my dog ate it.
Oh.
I had him in earlier, and I have a little table, a side table that I'm just putting all my stuff on, and one of them walks up and just
Go on.
Sorry guys.
One of my dog ate my homework. So my dog ate my science project.
Exactly. But I had spares.
Guys, I'm going to be a bit annoying and say, can we try and stay on track and keep going? Because
no worries, we'll get it done.
Kids have gone for an hour and 40 now, and they're starting to get very restless.
No, that's okay. Well, we'll finish up. That was literally
Totally.
that was literally the last thing for that section. So bringing it all together, looking at the CDSU links. We've talked about tectonic plates, and we've looked at how the crust, mantle, inner core. We've got that understanding now. So, my CDSU person, could you give us an overview of linking it all, bringing this all back to?
All right, let me put it in. Where did it go there? So I'll just like introduce what I'd started writing as well. Can you guys still see me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I've got a bit of information about the tectonic plates themselves. So they're made up of lithosphere, which is in the crust, in the very upper mantle, so just underneath the Earth crust. But yeah, the Earth crust is made up of the tectonic plates. Blah de blah. So our world is sectioned off into a bunch of tectonic plates, so kind of like a puzzle piece, really. So I mean, that could be another good example when showing students about where the tectonic plates are sectioned off to, like this. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, so they're constantly moving around at different rates and speed, and Australia is known to be the fastest moving continent, 6 centimeters north per year. But yeah, so in relation to earthquakes, which seem to occur along the plate edges, and where that plate edge is right near New Zealand, or on New Zealand basically, hence why they have more earthquakes.
I think that's you can make for a lot of areas on a lot of places that are on fault lines as well. I mean, you've got Japan, you've got India, I think Bangladesh, was it?
Yeah, and Indonesia as well, up in Indonesia. So Australia, we get very, very small earthquakes. Some we just can't feel because we're not near the edge of those tectonic plates. But yeah, so there's 3 types of plate boundaries, which is in student language we discussed as the tectonic plates being pushed together, then pulled apart and slide past each other. So in scientific terms, they're called convergent currents, divergent currents, and transform currents. So with reference to, say, the first experiment where we had the Play-Doh and everyone was kind of like, oh, it might go like this, or it kind of ended up going like that with the Play-Doh. So technically with the converging current, which is when they're pushed together, the plates do slide like that. I probably obviously had an advantage knowing that already, hence why I said it. But yeah, so usually when they slide like that, one one plate has more of a fault and they have less energy, which causes it to move down, slide down, and subduct, basically, because they have a fault. And then the other plate that shoots up has this immense amount of energy, which causes it to go like that. That can cause mountains and a lot of mountain ranges or earthquakes. Yeah, so that's the first one. Does anyone have anything to comment about that or any questions?
Pretty straightforward and pretty easy.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll go through the final hypothesis afterwards, but yeah, so that was the first one. And then, so we've got diverging currents, which pulls them apart. And when they're pulled apart, a new crust actually forms underneath. So this occurs roughly along the mid-ocean ridges. Obviously, it can occur on land as well, but that's more likely where it's where it happens. And can also cause a lot of volcanic activity because by them pulling apart, vents and fractures in the ridges kind of cause gases to be released, and then the magma shoots up. So yeah, there's that one. So with our experiment, when it was tearing apart, there's not too much to observe on really because it's just separating, and I think our observations kind of supported what the theory is about the divergent currents. It just depends where it pulls apart with the buildings. But yeah, when it does pull apart, crust, like another layer of crust starts to form and build up and fills that gap eventually. Yeah. And lastly, the transform current, which was the sliding past each other. Yeah, so they basically grind and slide against each other, similar to what our observation proved. It didn't, yeah, there wasn't really too much to add to that, I guess, but it can happen on land, and what happens is they shift, and it can literally cause land to just move. I think it's happening in America over time. There's like this one bit where one of the plates is literally just going to move across, and it's going to move the city. But obviously that's part of the fault zone. Yeah, so an example of that is small ponds, stream beds split in half, deep trenches as well that can cause. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Perfecto. Thank you, Matt.
Is there anything else I need to add that we haven't gone through really?
No, well, we've discussed safety and procedures anyway. That's just keeping, if there's any allergies, you will cater to the allergies. You know your students. Yep. If there is an allergy to eggs, for example, or egg shells, set up that boundary line, make it a teacher-centered, or if you, to engage everybody, you make it inclusive. You can change it using some of the examples that we've provided, such as arrowroot biscuits, whatever you call them, and use of other materials such as oranges, grapefruits, and other things that can actually represent your core or your 3 layers of earth. Linking to the idea of nature of science, this understanding, in my eyes, it comes to just understanding the natural world and how there is that difference between continents, tectonic plates, and how movement actually can affect our world and our way it works and what actually is happening. So we've used the examples a lot of some pretty horrific and catastrophic events, the Christchurch, and several magnitude ones that actually we can physically see what's happened because of the shift in tectonic plates. And it's happening at a continent, or it's not happening at a continent level, it's happening at a regional level. It's happening at that actual fault line areas, as we've discussed. Any thoughts, points, questions?
Yes, not just earthquakes though, but volcanoes as well, especially in Christchurch and New Zealand as a whole. But even I think Maddie said Australia is affected by earthquakes as well, but they're just such a low magnitude that we don't usually feel them.
Yeah.
Tsunamis as well, not even on our plate, like on our fault lines, like the one in Japan that I think it was 2012 or even later 2014. The waves caused by that, because it sends it out in all different directions. Australia was actually affected by that, but due to our natural defense system against that, i.e. the coral reef system that we have, the Great Barrier Reef, that actually slows down the process of those waves and the actual size of those waves, because it breaks before it hits our shoreline.
Yeah, so I think like looking in terms of linking to sciences. Oh, what was it?
Science is human endeavor and nature of science.
What were we talking about?
Nature of science.
Yeah. Oh, I can't remember now. But yeah, linking it to like real world scenarios that they can look at, like live footage even, would be great. It just depends, like, because like tectonic plate movement can cause a bunch of natural disasters. In relation to, because you stated, oh, you haven't stated when the content descriptor was, did you?
Well, no. Oh, that's right. I'm bringing that in. It's looking at year 6 and it's in Earth space sciences.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's looking at tectonic movement.
Okay. Does it specifically say, because I haven't looked at it, because that experiment was based more just around earthquakes, there was nothing really about any other natural disasters, whether we would bring in other natural disasters later, maybe like a mention of other ones. But if we're specifically looking at earthquakes just for that,
well, this is an explore phase activity. It's happening as your 4th lesson.
Yeah.
And it occurs, and following on from this, there will be instances where you're actually looking at the impact of earthquakes on natural processes and the world order. So we will bring in infrastructure, tsunamis, and that type of overall effect later on.
Yeah, and I feel like, just to pop in there, I feel like kids will just naturally think, oh, so a volcano will occur, and the teacher will answer that. Like, you'll get a lot of inquiry-based questions through kids. Like, you'll focus on earthquakes, but kids will literally, the highest standard ones will be like, oh, what about tsunamis and earthquakes? So it actually challenges mind thinking that way.
There will be definitely a lot of student inquiry with this one, because you're looking at a subject that is, theoretically speaking, it is very much happening around us constantly. And looking at the diagrams and looking at video and just showing the representation, it is very much, if this happens, what could happen next situation.
Could we link that to alternate conceptions by students not knowing that the plates are constantly moving underneath us, not just when there is an earthquake?
That would be definitely one of the big ones.
Have we done final hypothesis?
Wait, what?
Have we done final hypothesis?
No, we've got to wrap it up now.
Yeah. I reckon would we do a final hypothesis for like the 3 separate ones? Or
I think that'll be the best way, because we noted at the beginning that we were looking at doing the 3 for the 3.
Yeah. Well, I came up with a final hypothesis for the first movement, which was being pushed together. But before I say it, does anyone have an idea of what they think based on the initial hypothesis, say, of the tectonic plates being pushed together? Does anyone have an idea of a final hypothesis or what they think now that we know the CDSU?
I think the final hypothesis would be, if 2 tectonic plates collide, one of 2 events will happen. Either A, an eruption event will occur where both plates move up, or in this case, and the second option would be where one plate will supersede the other and submit to the other in terms of that. I think that kind of wraps it up, but that's just me thinking out loud. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I liked that one.
Yep. Right. Sounds good. I didn't mention that bit because I didn't really see much information about it colliding like that. So I didn't even put that in. But I mean, do you guys know it?
Well, that would be formation of mountain ridges and everything. I think that would come down to that idea of forming a ridge. And you have, if we're going back, bringing it back in the example of oceanic, we're looking at deep sea and everything. We do have deep sea ridges and deep sea mountains and everything, which we've noted has been linked to colliding of tectonic plates, and that moment of forming a bit of a barrier situation. At least that's what I read in a few things.
Yeah.
What did I say? It's no time to talk.
There's another one.
We're almost done. We'll give Mum back in a minute.
That's all right. He's taking notes. Can I show you? He's taking notes on his receipt. He's writing down what everybody's saying for me. He's doing his notes. That's
the way. Good job, man. Good job. All right. So final, Maddie, did you want to?
Yeah. So I've written out basically what you said. So one of two events. So if, then, because in that way. So if the plates are pushed together or collided, one of two events will happen. Either one, so it'll cause one of the plates to cause subduction, which can cause an earthquake, which occurs at the end of the oh my gosh. I'm just going to scribble that bit out.
We got what you mean. We got what you mean.
Yeah. I'll edit it afterwards. Or what was that one described as?
I called it eruption because it's like a volcano kind of coming up. That's just my general. I don't know if it's true.
There's magma underneath it. If they go like that, then they're creating a channel to go up.
Yeah. Cool beans. Yeah, so, and then because an immense amount of energy is released when that occurs. So do we do a final hypothesis for the other ones as well? I guess. There's not really much to... Oh, yeah, there is.
Yeah, you can... Well, for say...
It'll be a lot more basic, really.
Yeah.
Final hypothesis is just observations plus inferences.
Yeah.
If we just make an observation about what happened to create a final inference and hypothesis.
Yeah, we basically said the final hypothesis. We'll just write down the three hypotheses on the left-hand side.
Yeah, we've got it.
Yeah.
So basically, when a collision or a separation event occurs, there will be a change to either one or more of the tectonic plates, whether this be occurring in a physical sense where they collide, separation sense where the void will be formed, or the side sense where there is an instance of grinding or overlap occurring. One's moving up.
Yeah,
Bingo.
good.
We got this.
Just one big one to sum it up.
See, I can have my moments. I'm sorry. I'm so over the shop after that. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Yeah, and so with that, I think that wraps up everything that we need to discuss. Now, left-hand side, right-hand side.
So I've popped a right-hand side document up in week 6.
Okay, cool.
For us to do. And I've just written down, while we've been talking, we've kind of answered some of those left-hand side 5 questions. Shh, Mummy's trying to talk. The only thing we didn't really talk about is how we would assess it. But seeing as it is in the explore phase, it would obviously be some kind of formative.
Well, I think that would come under be recognition and just successful identification. So when using the egg example again, we'll bring it back. If you show students introduce the topic to them and show the image of the mantle, the core, outer core, show that example, then introduce the egg using that as a concrete resource, or using a grapefruit, orange, whatever you want to try and use for that, and just using that, and then having them individually or collectively identify which areas of which, and get them to point it out and list why, or describe why they think it. Or how do you?
Do
Yeah.
what we did and photograph the process of each thing and describe what was happening and then like the phases or stages.
Hmm.
I think
Thank
oh sorry.
Oh no, go.
Oh, I was just gonna say even exit slips as you know, because it is part of the explore phase, they're really just experimenting. So if we just give them an exit slip of something that they learnt that they didn't think they knew before, and they put their name on it, and then that's a pretty easy idea of what they've learnt, and you know, maybe also something they found hard as well, for a bit of teacher reflection as well.
Yeah.
And it's okay, like maybe we should work on that next time they didn't get the clear idea. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right,
Cute.
cool.
What is our representation of the left-hand side going to be this time? So you know how Darcy did a song last week, and we've had an infograph, and we've had a another infograph from what I remember.
Oh,
Did anyone have an idea?
We need to look at the list. There was a list, hey, to give us ideas.
We can do a story, we can do song again, which I highly don't recommend.
I think she wants us to do something different each week.
Yeah.
So there was discussion about that the other day, and we can do the same, but it's easier for us to show our range of creativity and our left-hand side wowness if we do different things.
Yeah.
So the student completed blah, 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 the group blah, 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 blah. If you would like to do something crazy like an interpretive dance, political satire, slam poetry, graffiti wall art, rap, country, pop song or puppet, please record it in video form. Your group may choose to do an online graphic organizer, an infograph, a prezi, a concept map, an app.
Have we done a concept map?
No.
I don't think so.
That might be good.
As in like a mind map, like they did, like one of the groups had last week.
And we can just organize. Yeah, I think that might be the way to go, because it's something that we can easily link off, go off, and it's something that we can also just.
We're about to have, WWE behind me.
That's right. We'll end it before the ring. All right. So I think that's everything we've discussed. We'll look at doing a concept map, and we'll just organize it as we see fit, and look forward to seeing that on the Monday. Anyway, thank you everyone for coming, hanging out with me today, putting up with me nonsense.
Glad you didn't get arrested.
Same. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something, and yeah.
Yeah, I think we did really well.
All right, hang on.
Finish it.
Stop the recording.
Stop the recording.